This is the podcast TV show that gives you the facts, food, and fitness. Join me as I travel around in my RV interviewing people from all around the world via online and in person, discovering the 8 dimensions of wellness so that we can find a way to live in complete balance. Check that out, guys, the final product. If you're hungry, you got smell-o-vision, come get it. There you go, I wish, right? 2, 3. Time to get going. Welcome to Wellness on the Go. I am your host, Jason Cronan, and enjoy the show. Our next guest is an audiobook narrator and a creator of a podcast called Valerie's Variety Show. By day, she's a podcast manager and a creative doer by night. I'd like to give a warm welcome from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Valarie Moss. Thank you so much for being here, Valerie, and how are you doing today?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
You're super welcome. I look forward to hearing about you and what you do for a living. I'd like to start by asking, when did you become interested in being a narrator for audiobooks?
So I started actually as a podcaster, and after a few years in the podcasting world, I had all the equipment and a full studio set up. And so what I wanted to do was utilize my voice in a different stream. And I talked to some other podcasters and got to know some of the ins and outs in the audiobook world. And then I just started to audition.
Assuming it helps your books as well, because you're a voiceover for a book. So your voice must be really good on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's funny, actually. I get a lot of feedback on my voice in my everyday life. When I leave a voice message for somebody like professionally, they're like, gee, you have such a great voice.
That's
and
great.
So that's kind of a nice compliment to give yourself confidence when you're doing voice work too, because it's just you and your voice all the time. And so if you can have any feedback, either from an author or from another podcaster like yourself, it's really nice to hear that.
Have you ever did any kind of movie voiceovers for any kind of like scenes for commercials or anything like that?
No, nothing like that.
But yeah, you should look into that, because if your voice is that like soothing and relaxing and people, and if you do characters, that'd be another avenue for you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes. It's a different branch of audiobook narration for sure. Because I do not have an acting background.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. But I did see that you narrated over 20 book titles. Which some titles, if you'd like to share with us, if there's any of the books that we know of or maybe want to listen to out there?
Sure. So some of the top ones that I've narrated are for authors and their memoirs. So one in particular is a woman, her name is Rana LaFay Hoot, and she wrote a book about having a near-death experience. And it was quite a long book, about 12 hours of narration. And in that world, it's about 3 times the recording finished amount. So they call it finished per finished hour. So yeah, that was a lot of hours put into that book. And you kind of start to own the character and own the personality of the writer. So that's one book that's really sat with me a lot. I've also narrated for psychologists and psychotherapists for their own practice. So when people come in for a session, it's my voice they hear to breathe and count down and reflect on themselves. So I've done that as well for different therapists, which is really interesting.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you can actually do voiceovers for a therapist like that. And if someone does the voice, so that's you. So that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's really nice.
I'm that voice, help you go to sleep at night.
Look at that. Maybe if I go on YouTube, I hear you sometimes help me fall asleep.
Maybe, yeah, you never know.
That's excellent. Overall, when you narrate a book, what's the process like? Because I know there's so many different steps. And if someone were to come to you, how does that process look?
So how it works is the author or the rights holder will provide an audition script for the book. And then review it with you. So they'll say, oh, maybe you need to be brighter, or maybe you need to be more moody or bluesy or sultry, depending on the type of book. And then from that process, you go into your recording time. And yeah, it's kind of interesting because there's different pay scales depending on the length of the book, depending on what type of author you're reading for. So I focus on indie authors because I'm kind of an indie podcaster. But so then you go through that process, then you submit your book. So when you're recording it, if the finished time of the book is 3 hours, so 10,000 words is an hour of narration time, then you're 3 times that for the record, edit, and process. And then you have to have like all your levels right. So your sound has to be like 192 kbp is the quality. You have to export with all these different effects and sound processing profiles within whatever sound system you're using. Like I use Audacity. And then you have to save everything a certain way and upload it into like this common site. Yeah, so I work with one company called ACX mainly, and it's called Audio Content Exchange, and they feed into Audible.
Oh, excellent. So Audible, yeah. I thought about Audible many times, and I've seen a lot of downloads from Audible. And you mentioned some of your indie clients. Is that your primary client that you focus on, or is there any other people like indie meaning in what way for our listeners out there not sure what indie means?
Indie is like self-publisher, or maybe it's your first book. Maybe it's a book that it's like another edition. So you've put one out maybe 10 years ago and you're reviving it for today. So that, I've actually worked with a couple of local people like right in Calgary and have supported them in narrating their own book as well. So I work kind of both ways. So they narrate in their own home studio, and then I do all the processing and make it right for Audible, and I edit everything as well. So any kind of like, not just editing maybe a mispronunciation, but you're also editing mouth noise, you're editing room tone, you're editing ums and any clicks of the mouth, like anything like that, you're working to smooth out and make it really natural. Breath sounds as well.
The challenge with the ums and ahs and so's. Yeah, I have to take those out a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's some of it, like, especially for podcasting, like some of that is just like, we are human beings. We do breathe and we do have, ums and wows and things like that are repetitive to how you speak naturally. So some of that should stay in, especially in a podcast. But
Absolutely.
In an audiobook, it's very different. You need to have it be very clear and crisp and none of those things.
No, that's absolutely great. And you have all the equipment. I know that equipment does take time and the learning process of it. Did you learn that on your own, or did you go to school to become a narrator?
I learned it all on my own, trial and error. And yeah, so I started out with the Yeti microphone, and which was great for podcasting, not great for audiobook narration. Too much room tone, too many, it's just too sensitive. And it's a USB mic, so it kind of processes your voice when you're going in to actually record as well. So it's better to have an auxiliary mic that's, old school.
Like an SM58, almost like a vocal mic, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's okay. Actually have the SM7B, I think it is.
Yeah, I had the SM58. I love those mics for vocal close-ups, and they don't get a lot of surround sound. That's a perfect mic out there. And like you said, like the SM Shure mics are really, really good. But SM58s, yeah, they're great mics overall. Like, what's your favorite mic to use out there?
Well, I have the SM, but I use the Yeti and that one. Those are the only two. And they were both really good mics for what I use them for. Now I just use the Shure all the time for podcasting and everything.
That's great to know. For some people listening out there that want to get started as a hobby, doing some audio editing, but do you work international, or do you work United States and Canada and other countries?
Yeah, all over.
All over. But the internet's perfect nowadays because you can edit from anywhere in the world. And do you speak another language, the edit?
I don't. It would be really nice though. If you speak another language, you have a lot more opportunity for sure.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't speak another language either, but definitely I know people that maybe have referrals that can do that for you. That's a perfect opportunity to refer back and forth.
I have like a group of audiobook narrators, a sort of a club, and one of the people in the club speaks 5 languages.
Wow.
So she's very busy.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
They're like a confusing.
Isn't that amazing? Oh, it's amazing.
Her book will be in 5 different languages. Start off in Spanish, English, French. Get confused where she's at. That's excellent. Now you have a podcast because you're a very experienced podcaster. I learned so much from talking to you before the show. Your podcast, Valerie's Variety Podcast. What's it about, and what's your focus on the show so that people out there listening want to check that out as well?
Sure. So yeah, I've been podcasting since 2018. And my show kind of has evolved into what it is now. It wasn't always the same theme. So right now my theme is eat, read, create, and how those 3 things influence us every day, and how the people that kind of make that happen for us. So for me, it's my friends, it's family, it's people who have passions and hobbies. So eat is, share a recipe, share a restaurant review, make good food. The read part is the audiobook narration I put in there, and I read a ton. Like I read and read and read all kinds of books. So book reviews, read, and then I also interview authors of books I read as well. So not ones that I do audiobook narration, but books that I read, I reach out to the author and say, hey, I'd love to interview you. How did you come up with this story?
That's a perfect podcast out there because all the people that have a passion for reading and food goes hand in hand. It's a great show overall. Everyone out there, check out the show of Valerie's Variety Podcast, and that information will be in the bottom of the podcast details as well.
Thank you.
Overall, Valerie, you give so much knowledge to the show today and about narration of audiobooks. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners to learn about you or how to find you?
Oh, sure. So my website is valeriemoss.ca, and you can find links to all my socials from there. And I actually have over 500 blog posts. So I was a blogger first before I started podcasting. I have shows for all types of listeners. So sensitive shows, funny shows. I cry once in a while when I'm really super passionate. So it's just really about me and sharing and mentoring what I know to everybody. And yeah, you can find out more at my website.
You're super busy. That's a blogging, podcasting, narration. I assume you spend a lot of time on the computer. So that's great.
I do. Yeah, you're right.
Got to get a break every once in a while, but definitely it's been awesome. And the one question I ask everybody is, what is your definition of total wellness?
So I think total wellness for me means from within. It means being calm inside your body. It means being content in what you do. And I believe people need to have passions, whether it's passionate about food or working out or coloring or creating something. So the last part of my theme, eat, read, create, I didn't quite get to, but the create part is create a memory, create a story, create a DIY project. It's about having that passion to be able to share with other people. I might not know anything about fitness, but when I talk to you, I can tell you're just so passionate about what you do. Those are the people that I like to bring on my show, is somebody who just loves something and they need to share it with other people. So
absolutely.
And when you create content that you believe and that inspires you, then you just share that with other people.
Because I could see that you really love to help people get their message out there. and that their words are now an audio version, so you don't even have to pick up the regular book, and you could be on the go, listening to you on the podcast, listening to your narrations of your books, and check out your blog. All of Valerie's information for the show will be at the bottom of the podcast, and you can contact her to hire her. But it's been an awesome time having you on the show, and thank you so much, and have a great fit day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And
you're very welcome.